Okay, Chapter 13, Gone with the Whales. Chapter 13, Onward Through the Fog. We sailed east through the dreaded Straits of Magellan, hurried by squally westerly gales, as all eyes and minds tended to our sailing in patchy fogs. The Patags had lighted bonfires on successive headlands to guide us. We blessed them. Mariner, our albatross, in near gales at times, never failed to silently mark these headlands. He would also circle very low, if wind permitted, to mark dangerous low rocks and surfy reefs. His height above the water could be read as the height of the protruding rocks, we learned from experience. A veritable flying buoy system. Didgeridoos in pairs and threes were heard through the fog, both ahead and behind. God bless the Patags. Even so, the danger was great in those narrow, winding, shifting, gusty waters, and we took no chances. Lolo, warmly bundled up, took the honey alone ahead of us, our proa. He zigzagged back and forth, finding the channel, reading depth roughly by the color of the sea. He dented her metal keel badly, but managed to get back to the ship where our blacksmiths were able to pound it out and fix it. We had another passenger. As we prepared to sail away from the Aleuts and Patags, waiting for a favorable wind, we had no idea how long we had to wait. Our two peace dogs suddenly together jumped overboard and swam ashore and ran off at full speed. We worried. Were we in danger? What did they see? 2 whole days later, they returned as the wind shifted to westerly. They returned with a companion, a coyote, small, buff-colored, with black tips of feet and ears, male, with a sharp snout, large, fluffy, tattered tail, and a nervous manner. No wonder he was nervous. How, with us to be around, how or why he was there, only freedom and liberty knew. We dubbed him Dingo. Freedom, liberty, and Dingo. And we found later Liberty was pregnant with a pup, which turned out to be only one, with one white eye and one blue eye. A white pup with a narrow snout. Looked sort of like Indian Bob without his hat. But that was all in our future. Meanwhile, the three canines immediately jumped into the open hold and scrambled to a hideout somewhere in the bilges, where they wouldn't come out for 2 days. Much growling and puppy-like yelping came from the hold. we, we speculated on what was going on in there. We did not intrude. After they came aboard, we sailed in 1 hour, the best wind in a month. They must have brought it. As we left the straits, we all began to understand something. That we had just left our land of cocaine. You remember the mythical place in Bruegel's painting where people lie fat and happy under laden fruit trees among huge round cheeses, where pigs run around with knives stuck in them ready to eat, and in the far fields the grain harvests itself in perfect circles. Yes, the Patags were as happy as people had any right to be. Their secret was to have little and need less. Even though they ate their fat people in shame, it was good meat and good grease, and they were still favored by the whale people and the seal people. If only we too could learn to sweat in the snow and not burn all the firewood in one night. Ah, paradise, paradise, and paradox. Who would have thought to find it among the ice? Was the myth of Ultima Thule true also? A very old myth from the Scandinavian countries. And was every tribe so content, if far enough from white people? This we really began to suspect, with shame. Indian Bob and Cascadas were giving us lessons in fighting. We had all grown leery of violence among us. Yes, we were. And often we tried to defuse it with humor or song or even prayer sometimes. Our way of life was so new to us at the time. It was such an experiment. But those two, Indian Bob and Cascadas, like we'd say about married couples, which they were not, they had a license to fight somehow. They had their own tiny cabin. We'd fitted out several with double bunks. I saw that. We'd fitted out several with double bunks, and all the nearby cabins had to use earplugs at night. When they got really wound up, she'd yell in Blackfoot and he'd yell in Arapaho, since they couldn't understand each other anymore. Things usually would then proceed from slaps and blows to laughing, then noisy love-making and complaining. Next morning, maybe this is why we tolerated them. Next morning in the galley, woe betide anyone who commented on their black eyes and bruises. They'd get food snatched away or thrown at them. Espy and the two could get into it too, as the three drank together and played cribbage or dominoes. But all three were so proud of being able to outdrink the other two that they never descended to fighting or puking, just arguing. They were a show that some of us, like me, enjoyed watching until we pass out. Their fighting and drinking was almost Irish. In fact, maybe it was Irish for all three. Mongrels all we were, except maybe Bob Sanger and our Ali'i. At night, I began to dream more and more. I was actually calling for dreams. To that end, I had stopped smoking hashish for a while. It blurs my dream memories. Though I still dream, I know. I theorize. It's because with hash, I dream while awake. So my dream generator is tired out, you might say, when I retire. In any case, at that time, twice, a week apart, I ate some mushrooms. Some of those psilocybin mushrooms that I'd gotten in San Francisco. Although by then I was feverish. More on that later. It's hard for me sometimes to remember these long ago events in the order they happened. The first time at sea that I ate the mushrooms, only a small handful, it was dusk. I stood by the lady with the torch at our bows. No huddled masses here. I stood watching the painters at work from boats on our no longer black hull. This is for you, sister, among others. We had finally turned loose our mad artists. On the stern, over, around, and below, the gold letters Vesta, New Bedford, was Eve's group portrait of our entire crew, all madly waving goodbye, and the word Aloha. Yet Adam was antsy after completing a masterwork. His masterwork was on our old patched mainsail. We hoped the art and the sail would survive till Boston, if we went there. Adam and Eve had lots of paints and brushes and canvas. But on the sail, as I was saying, on the sail was a large tanned St. Francis in his brown monk's robe and rope belt, singing to the sky, one arm waving, covered with small birds of all colors. 2 albatrosses soared overhead. Around his feet were painted 4 tortoises, 2 dogs, a coyote, and a black cat. In the saint's left arm was cradled the baby Jesus, fat, black, and laughing, and haloed. Francis's hood was thrown back. He and the babe wore crowns of roses, pink and white and red. Not very many thorns showing, just a few. Rose petals were everywhere in the painting, like snow. The birds played with them. In an upper corner, La Virgen de Guadalupe, the Virgin of Guadalupe, looked down, smiling, blonde and fair, in her blue robe and golden aura. No crosses were to be seen anywhere. We knew we couldn't hide forever, especially with that painting on our mainsail, although we had usually succeeded. We'd cooked up We'd cooked up a cockamamie story about the ship being leased to a religious art academy with Adam as our professor. He sure could act the part. God is great. God is great. The four good-natured missionaries could pose as art instructors. Perhaps from a heretical sect, we suggested. They were aghast at the thought of lying, but they agreed to do some subterfuge for us. We actually had to use this ruse only once, to keep from being robbed by an Argentine warship near the Falklands. Oh, perdón, senor. I mean, Las Malvinas. Readers, you'll hear of that in due time. Perhaps. I was delirious during that episode. Anyway, as the mushroom trance came on, the artists worked on their murals. On the port side was a shining sea surface, 3 feet above her waterline, with masses of those wonderful lacy Japanese-like whitecaps painted. Near the stern of our ship, a faraway island gleamed with coconut palms through rain and mist. Near the bow, dolphins leaped in unison, all sizes, near the bow, and sperm and blue and fin whales played and raced and spouted amidships. Flying fish flew in phalanxes. Huge manta rays jumped. One did. Huge manta ray. Orcas spy hopped with their heads up above the water as if looking around. That was the port side. On the starboard side was a night scene. Glittering against the black hull, a sea surface capped with glowing crests and lanes of phosphorescence. These were cleverly done in paint with mica flecks in it and fish scales, so it sparkled in any light, even in moonlight. A dark serpentine head glistened above the water, darkly iridescent and only foggily seen below a painted full moon. Over all spread a curtain of aurora, splendid in blue, white, red, and green. Towards the bow, rosy-fingered dawn tinged red-painted clouds. At the bow, below Vesta and her torch, was painted a rising sun on the water. To port was a rain curtain with a vividly glowing rainbow, completing the arc of the aurora to starboard. You get the picture, readers? This perfect arc. Ah, how beautiful a memory it is. I went below and fell into a deep reverie, a sort of dream, but waking too. I was a whale, a young blue whale of very large size. As the mushrooms came on like big puffy puppets made of bread dough, stomping all over me while laughing, my whale self took in his deepest, biggest breath ever and dove into a long, long darkness. I sensed the whale's thoughts, but only partially. My understanding grew as this guided dream went on. The whale swam steadily under a roof which I knew to be ice. The bottom was heard to be far below. I heard and could interpret sound pulses. Farther, farther yet. I heard 3 of my kinfolk calling from far ahead, guiding me in my long blind swim. After almost a human hour, having traveled over 10 human leagues, 30 landlubber miles, I surfaced into a high black a huge black high-domed ice cavern over deep water. In there were 3 old male blue whales. 2 were very old indeed. The oldest on Earth, I knew. The third was a huge, powerful adult, vigorous, not older than 40 human years, but over 120 feet in length, longest of our people on the planet. I am only 15 years old, but very big for my age. What we did there was for us alone to do, but for the benefit of all. We began to sing, us 4. You could say we were reciting the history of our race, our ocean. But that was not all of it. Not all of our great joint poem, our hymn. Yet more was it. Human language cannot express it yet. A tuning, a playing on the resonances of hundreds, no, thousands of miles of ocean. To harmonize the very waves and ice flows into a sonic dance of unity. Will was involved, the great and benevolent will of my people, the whale people, who were determined to maintain the world on its axis, come what may. This place, this black ice cavern, was unique upon Earth. It had not always existed. It would not always exist. But meanwhile, the huge air chambers with bergs formed a resonating cavity, my human mind commented. A resonant cavity which could carry our booming tidings of joy and wisdom much farther than anywhere else before or since. It even carried north past the great peninsula and its rumbling volcanoes to bless Tierra del Fuego and Patagonia with its echoing, plangent paean anthem of blessing. This place was so far from any breathing hole that only we 4 of all the air breathers on Earth could reach it, except perhaps some of our sperm whale cousins who were being slaughtered everywhere. Unlike us. So we sang for hours and days on end. We all knew the song, but each time we repeated it, it was hours long. It had changed in the telling. We 4 were bringing news of spirit life streams, which even we were unaware of. We were conduits, not just singing, but at the same time listening, channeling thought through sound to unite all the seas. And the great trees also heard and responded. Yes, exquisite does not begin to describe it. Even more than the mound builders North America, these sounds spread peace on Earth. Peace on Earth. But now I had been called from Brazilian shores to join my fellows. I could tell their deep united tones over 1,500 miles away. The eldest of us spoke, you might say, then. For these new thoughts, we had a special tongue. Although we do not speak with our tongues as you minnow humans do. That was a whale joke. Our eldest said, our time comes to an end. You younger ones will have to leave here and find another place to maintain the world, as we once did before my time. We have read in the vibrations what this once meant. To live at the mercy of the ice, to not know what our kin the orcas intend, to see our dolphins, like children, spin away on their own youthful frolics, deaf to the elder voices which keep them from stranding themselves in their dancing. All this we may have to endure, and much worse, in these new times when the iron icicles pierce ever more of our hearts as they never did in olden times. Oh, woe, woe to our sperm cousins who once shared our peace. Now death is near for them all. We and our finback brothers are still able to outswim the ships, but we see that this too will soon end. This will happen. The turning earth will not wait for all of her children to mature as we have. The two-legged ones have found us here. Yes, said the elder. The ice overhead, shifting, has opened cracks. Breath of the sea comes out, visible in the air as our breath is. And some humans walking on the ice have seen it. They are curious, like our beloved dolphin children. And they have come twice now. The second time they sent a person down under the dome, through a crack, with a small sun to see by. He could breathe underwater. He dove. In my human mind, I saw a bulky human figure from Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, diving into the black lagoon under the ice. The elder continued. This brave being heard our song and pursued it too deep, like Ulysses or Daedalus, I thought. He drowned. We three took his body upon our flippers and placed it on a floating ice cake, lest other humans pursue their fellow to death in our black waters. But now you must go. Our song is not and must not be for the ears of these humans. Not here, that is, and not now, not while they kill us, although we love them. Someday, he lamented. We felt his wisdom. They have heard our song, but they cannot know how many we are or how few. The elder continued, if two remain behind to sing, they will think that they have discovered the whole secret, and they will not search for you, for the magic, as they call it. To buy and sell it for gold, we hear. That last comment was for my human mind alone to understand. The elder continued. The two remaining would not retreat, but continue to sing and to fast, I thought, through the inevitable harpoonings, cuttings, and killings, which would not help them to know our ancient magic. Only listening can do that. We, said the eldest, we will die here singing of love. If not killed, we will starve. Thus no ships shall follow us where we go. I listened. The two younger whales heavily and sadly took one last breath, steeling themselves for a long life of being hunted as the greatest bags of oil and money on earth, and dove to the very bottom for their last swim from their great shrine. And I slipped into sleep, true sleep, and true dreams came. I was becoming feverish. Of course, we had had a parting feast with the Patags. To this I attributed my growing fever. A piece of the fat people, perfectly aged and cooked in its own grease, had been offered to us, with full knowledge by all of what it was. We now had twice daily councils, at which we could share all that we had learned. I took a bite of ground sloth and regretted it immediately. The spirit made me sick. No one else, just me. I was the one who had transgressed taboo in asking about the fat people, and how wrong and silly had been my understanding. Yet the Aleuts had thanked us sincerely, and me personally, for broaching the subject. Yakutat said, "You were like an orca breaching," and helping perhaps to free two races of ages old self-doubt, true love. Nonetheless, I entered the dream time. A recurring dream occurred as my fire raged. One-time visions drifted toward me, then floated away like icebergs in the fog. Here's the recurring dream. I was in a cave, looking out its round mouth and its 6-foot, toothy, mouth-like opening. Sometimes I was myself, but older. Sometimes I was a huge, furry, yellow, unfamiliar fat person. At first, I was alone in the cave. Then someone else appeared next to me. Once it was my Granny Gordon. Once my mother, who sang Stephen Foster songs to me. Usually it was a large, silent, brown figure wrapped in a skin without hair. Once, Captain McNaughton was there. He laughed. Once, Captain McNaughton was there as a huge black bear with big, long, yellow teeth. He patted me on the shoulder all friendly-like and knocked me over. Then in each dream, at the cave mouth appeared a large, white bear. She, went for the McNaughton bear and they began to mate, ignoring me. Black and white cubs appeared, played around me. Then they ate me. Once it was Kathy and McNaughton doing it. The cubs still ate me up. Or Kathy would appear with a huge mane of white hair which drifted all over her white body. Arms outstretched longingly, she came to me. Her hands turned to red-brown claws a foot long. She became a white bear and she tore me apart as the real Kathy, watched silently. Or one time my father was with me. He whistled loudly as Patag had, and our 4 farm horses, Lover, Gypsy, May, and June, all tried to force their way into the cave at once. Papa called to them in his old, gentle horse voice. Whoa, whoa, whoa. In his old, gentle horse voice. But they went mad and they burst in and trampled us both as the Chambersburg Palomino danced in the cave. In the best cave dream, oh, there were so many, Kathy appeared like a shining white angel with the sun behind her. She stretched her arms wide and her hair formed a shining cape falling to her feet. Beside me sat my grandmother McGonagall, Mama's mother, who had always seemed severe and distant to me. Now she hugged me close and sang to me in her old Belfast brogue, which she put on every year on St. Patrick's Day, an old Scottish lullaby. We were truly a Scotch-Irish family. Shellicky Bookie is a baby name in Scotland for a snail. Shellicky, Shellicky Bookie, put out your long horns. All the ladies are coming to see you. Shellicky, Shellicky Bookie. And snails appeared on the cave floor. But as they crawled closer, they grew and turned yellow and became fat people. They tore me apart as Kath and Granny watched and sang the song. Other dreams, as I've said, drifted in and out. In one such, I was under a weeping willow with some women in tall peaked hats with veils. I was a dwarf, a king's jester. We looked out on a huge green meadow where two large armies were encamped. There were no guns, only spears, shining swords, and glinting armor. One army was all white men, one was all black men. In the center, between the two armies, was what appeared to be parley, negotiation. No blood had yet been spilled, and I thought the two armies of perfectly formed men were achingly beautiful. At the parley, a beautiful black warrior went down on his knee to the white knight, arms spread wide. He was eloquently offering a compromise. I was thinking, how could my relatives take their youth, their beauty, their honor, and their handiworks, all that armor, all those swords, how could they use it to kill one another and burn towns? If all that energy went to working together, the whole world could be healed. I was deformed, a dwarf, left to stay with the hapless women, while the perfect ones maimed one another. Oh, what a waste! Let me die rather than these perfect ones, but let me not kill, ever. A note from the author. I have to add, I actually had this dream in 1997 at the Hopi Prophecy Rock. I now return you to our story. But Jack and I have a great deal in common. Another dream came after a cave dream where Kathy and I were alone, trapped but loving and having one another to hold on to. This time I was riding to town, Gettysburg, in our buggy. Instead of dying wounded, I saw at each door young men and women too, rising from their beds, throwing off their clothes, coating themselves with mud, and following me singing, holding quinine bottles. End of chapter 13. That's the break time, please.